For the first part of your drawing, you're going to use the guided drawing steps, which is in the slideshow, to start your outlines. So there are 3 different types of dogs in there you can choose from, and you can kind of mix and match. Just make sure you're following each of the steps. Your nose is going to be angled downward toward the bottom right or left corner of your paper, depending on which direction your dog's head is tilting in. So if your dog's head is tilted to the left, the nose points down to the bottom right corner. If your dog's head is tilted to the right, then the nose will be angled downward towards the left corner, and the head will be all the same angle. Once you're done with the head, then the body will be straight, and that'll show the dog's head turning to the side. You're going to go over each of the steps, create it the way that you want it to look, refine, erase, change, and then once you have your final outline, you can go on to the next step, which is painting. So to paint, you're going to need the colors of your dog's fur. Now, depending on your dog's fur length and texture, you may want to use a paintbrush, or you may want to just go right in and do your finger painting. If you're painting in a small area, you want to use one of your smaller fingers so that you don't get outside the lines too much. But just keep in mind you're creating texture. So you're using the finger painting technique to create texture for the fur. So you can combine your colors either on your paper or on a palette. Here you can see I'm adding white into the dog's fur to create kind of a reflection of light because the dog's fur is wet. And things that are wet often look shiny. So I wanted to add some white to create that reflection of light. For the dog's tongue, I mixed red and white right on my paper, and the white's going to give it some texture and create that reflection of light as well, since the tongue is also wet. Since the nose is such a small area and it should be very defined, I used a very small paintbrush. So depending on the texture that you're trying to create, either a shiny nose, the tongue, or the fur, you could use a combination of your fingertips. You could use paintbrush. You can add white to it to create kind of like a shine. You could add glimmers. You could add shading. Whatever you feel is going to work to create the texture of your dog. And once you're done with that, you're going to let it dry. Now that my dog is dry, I'm just going to cut it out very roughly, and I'm going to trace the outline of my dog onto my black paper so I know where it's going to go. This is just for the positioning. I don't want my dog to be on my paper at first because I don't want it to get totally covered with splatters. So I'm going to outline where it's going to go with my pencil, and then I'm going to start drawing the guidelines for the pattern of where I'm going to put all my water droplets. So starting toward the top, I'm going to curve to the left because the head is tilted to the left. So you're going to want the direction of your guidelines to curve outward and over to the left. So I'm going to show you a picture on the slideshow that will show you where the lines go. You want to have at least 8 or 9 lines, and they're going to wrap around the head, starting toward the head or close to the head and coming outward and like twisting to the left or curving to the left. So once you have those lines, then it'll be a lot easier to show that sense of motion because all of your dots and all of the patterns in the splatter paint are going to follow those curves. Now it's time for the fun part. So you're going to want to start with white, and you're going to hold your brush in your left hand and pull up on the bristles with your right index finger. Pull up toward you. If you push down on the bristles, then you're going to get paint in your face, so be very careful. Make sure you're pulling up and holding your brush down toward your paper, but just not too close because you don't want to accidentally touch your paper with the brush. So hold it just a little bit above the surface of your paper and pull back those bristles, and you're going to get those awesome splatters all across your paper. As you follow the line, it's going to have the direction of the splatter following the line. So you don't want to just arbitrarily do the splatters all over. You actually want to curve your paintbrush and even turn your paper in some parts so that you can follow the lines that you drew with your paint splatter. You can do it also in between those lines. It doesn't have to just be on the line. It could be in between. Just continue following those directions that curve outward in that kind of spiral. Once that's finished, you're going to want to take your fingertips and you're going to dip it in the white paint and you're going to do your dot patterns to create the big water droplets. Make sure you're following those guidelines that you drew, and then you could even add color on top of the white. Then, once you finish your water droplets, you can fill in between them. So I added a little bit darker color, so I didn't add as much white to kind of fill in. Then you're going to want to add more splatters, and you can do any colors you want. My main recommendation is to add a little bit of color to a blob of white so that it's nice and bright against that dark background. You want to create that sense of contrast. So in order for those colors to really show up, you want them to be almost like a pastel. So start with a blob of white, add the color that you want just in a couple of dots to it, mix it together. You can always darken it, but it's very hard to lighten your paint. You'll end up using tons of white paint. So start with a glob of white, add a little bit of color to that, mix it up, and then you'll be able to use that to splatter your paint. So I went and I added lots of colors. You guys can be creative with this. The main thing you want to do is follow those directions of the swirls of where that water is being flung off the dog. So remember, you're creating a sense of movement by creating this rhythm of these water droplets. And as long as you have that, then you're going to be in great shape. So while my painting is drying, I'm going to go back and cut out my dog perfectly so that all the little details are cut out nicely, because now I have plenty of time to wait. So go ahead and do that on your picture, and then once your painting is dry, you'll be able to glue it down in place. When you glue it down, just make sure that you line up the bottom edge of your dog with the bottom edge of your paper and put it right where you outlined it to begin with. Then take your black oil pastel and go ahead and outline your dog and outline the eyes and the nose and the face so that it really stands out against that beautiful background. Once that's done, you can add more paint splatters over the front of your dog. So it won't be as many as the background. The background is really, really loaded up with the paint splatters. Now you can add a few on the front just to add a little bit of interest and continue with that rhythm. So this is the finished project, and look at that sense of movement. It really looks like your dog is shaking. You've got that amazing rhythm going on with your paint splatters. So that is it. So good luck, guys. I hope you have fun with this. It is such a fun project. Experiment. Don't be afraid of experimenting. And I can't wait to see what your dogs look like when you're done.